You're watching Reason and Theology Live, a show dedicated to charitable discussions, debates, interviews, commentary, and analysis. The show concentrates on theological topics, historical matters, and philosophical problems with content ranging from introductory material to in-depth examinations. And now, your host, Michael Lofton.
Hey everybody, welcome back on a Tuesday. We're having an RNT chill stream. It's been a little while since we've had one of these, so anything is up for grabs in the chat. You can ask questions, make comments. Like I said, just an RNT chill stream. Want to show y'all something here in just a second. I got a extra resource for y'all if y'all haven't seen it yet. It is called God With Us. It's an online catechetical resource. Let me share it with y'all. You should be able to see it now. Here we go. godwithus.org. This is really good resources, especially catechetical resources. You just simply click there on catechetical resources, and here is different material for Ruthenians, Ukrainians, Melkites. You can click on lecture library at the top, and you'll see different classes that are offered for free. Heaven on Earth, O Death, Where's Thy Sting? The Biblical Roots of the Paschal Homily, Ascetical Practices of Hospitality, Unlocking the Jesus Prayer, Damascene Unholy Icons, History of the Ecumenical Councils. I really liked this series by Father Kappas. Really, really good. Like I said, these are free, and you can access that, right there online. And looks like it's 5 lectures on the first 7 ecumenical councils. So if you haven't really learned about the ecumenical councils yet, there you go. Really, really good resource. All right, I'm seeing something in the chat here. Sean McGinnis, is it true that the Novus Ordo is the only valid expression of the Roman Rite? That's not exactly what Pope Francis says in Traditionis Custodes, though. That's the problem. The other difficulty is, so not only do we have misreportings of what he actually says, but what he does say is unclear, because the Vatican still uses terms like extraordinary form and ordinary form. Even after Traditionis Custodes. So it's like, okay, well, what do we do with that? And he hasn't really given us any way to speak about the Latin Mass in a way that's different than the terms of extraordinary form versus ordinary form. So until he gives us something better, I'm not sure really what to make of that comment. He needs to clarify something, because obviously he believes that there is something as an extraordinary form, because he still has the extraordinary form in limited situations. So what are we supposed to call it? It's still a Roman Rite liturgy. What do you want to call it? So yeah, I think he's unclear. James interviews, are you still working on a book on Eastern Orthodoxy? I am. I've been listening to an old interview on Orthodox apologetics and made me think of it. Yeah, that interview, the interviewer was problematic because he changed the show topic 5 seconds before we went live. So everything that you heard was completely different than what he said we were going to discuss. And he changed it 5 seconds before we went live because he didn't realize what my theological position was, and he assumed. And so he chose the topic that, are all the churches pretty much united in one? Which, no, I don't believe that. Obviously, I don't believe that. But I guess he thought that I was some kind of heretic who believed that. And then he finds out, no, I don't believe that. So he changed it on me like 5 seconds before we went live, which I didn't really appreciate. But yeah, you can still watch the interview. I'm a trooper, so I'll still go roll with the punches. Jade says, nice fade. Thank you. Does blessing oneself with holy water decrease temporal penalties? So the more you bless yourself with holy water, the more the debt of sin is reduced. So we're just going to be there like over and over a million times, right? You could also gain indulgences from reading scripture and doing other things. And you can gain a plenary indulgence rather than blessing yourself with holy water a million times. maybe go for a plenary indulgence. But it seems like, if I recall correctly, that there's an indulgence attached to blessing yourself with holy water, if I recall correctly. I'd have to double check. Let's see. You sound like your very early 2019 self right now. That's fine. By the way, is my mic loud enough? Let me know if the audio is not good. Andres says, if it wasn't because of you, I would not have started considering Catholicism. It's encouraging to hear that. And if you have any questions, let me know. Be happy to help. I'll send you a compilation I made of his insane nonsense. He literally thinks he's a prophet. Who? William Tapley? I heard of that, but I don't know if I've watched anything by him, but I've heard the name. Yeah, maybe send it to me. That'll be fine. Can a Catholic be a presuppositionalist? I don't see why not. I don't necessarily subscribe to it, but I don't see why you couldn't be. I mean, couldn't would be if there's something by the Magisterium that would exclude that. And as long as you could check the boxes on certain things from Vatican I, which I imagine you could as a presuppositionalist, I think you're good. So again, that doesn't mean I think that's the best method. I'm just saying I think you could be. Do you think some parishes offer confession far too infrequently? I have 2 kids under age 2, and sometimes I'm shocked at how hard it is to physically make it to the church. You could argue that. Then again, you could also argue that we as Catholics go to confession very, very frequently compared to most people in the first millennium. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying let's keep that in perspective. Some people would have maybe gone to confession once in their life, and that was it. And that was pretty common. Again, that doesn't mean that that's ideal or the best thing. I do think that going to confession more frequently than that is better. I just want to guard against scrupulosity because I've suffered through scrupulosity, and I know many people do. And so I just want to guard against that. Let's see. Would God forgiving Job's friends their punishment fully in Job 42 be a foreshadowing of indulgences? I don't know how that would be a foreshadowing of indulgences. It's God just simply forgiving someone of their sins is the same thing that we have today. It's not even a foreshadowing. It's just the same thing. God forgives people of their sins. But of course, there's a difference between forgiveness of eternal guilt and temporal guilt. And I don't see what element of temporal guilt is being referenced in Job. So help me out there. Is there a difference between holy water and blessed water? No. Thank you for the super chat, Ramses. Why is it so hard to convert the ones we love most? I hear you. And, in those cases, for people who you love and know you personally, a lot of times they won't hear you because, what's the saying that Jesus said? A prophet is without honor, or is not without honor, except in his hometown, or something along those lines. People who know you and grew up with you think, oh, that's just so-and-so, what can he tell me? Especially people who are older than you. I knew you when you were a baby. What can you tell me? the best way to try to evangelize people like that is through the sanctity of your life, because it's very unlikely they'll actually hear you out. Very unlikely. Yeah, the Matthew 5:22, whoever says you fool shall be liable to hell of fire. What does this exactly mean? It can't just simply mean calling somebody a fool, since the book of Psalms calls people fools, right? The fool says in his heart. So it can't simply mean that. But what specifically it means, the way I've understood it, is a person, you're condemning that person to hell. But I could be wrong. That might not be the proper interpretation. That's just what I've can recall, but I'll have to look further into it. Religiously, stuff says, in Job, his friends constantly say his suffering is punishment for sin, as you only suffer as penalty. God corrects them by showing Job suffered undeservingly and that he'll forgive. I guess I'm still not seeing the temporal guilt issue here, so help me out here. Guess I'm not seeing it. Let's see. Ramsey says, I feel like the more I present the truth, the more they reject it, and the more I fear for their salvation. I hear you, but I mean, again, if it's people who knew you and, you know, grew up with you, they're not really going to hear it from you. You might have somebody else who they don't know who presents the exact same thing, and they'll listen to that person. It's just, you know, it's that syndrome of, you know, I knew you when you were a baby kind of a thing. Or people who know all your faults and things like that. So, your best advice on talking to fundies, like IFB kind, yeah, how to best open the minds of IFBs. That's a difficult one. I can't tell you that I can really give you an answer there, given that I haven't seen a whole lot of ability on part of a lot of people who subscribe to the IFB to have an open mind and to hear you out. So I don't know, other than simply presenting the truth and, you know, hoping that God convicts them. I'm not so sure there's a whole lot one can do, because it seems like people who are in the IFB movement have their mind made up in most cases, and they're really not just hearing. So present the truth, show them a life of sanctity. That's all you can do. How many tattoos do I have? I think it's like 13. What do they mean? They're different religious tattoos, but I was actually thinking about getting them removed. But I think once you get them removed, it kind of leaves a scar that looks like the tattoo from what I see. So it's like, why would I want to just trade one tattoo for another kind of a thing? But I don't know. It might maybe some of them do it well and would remove it without leaving scars. And if that's the case, I might be willing to do it. Maybe we'll have to start a GoFundMe. Help Michael remove his tattoos. I'll do it too. I would start a GoFundMe. Help me remove my tattoos. You know why? Because a lot of people will discount me because of them. And sometimes it's too hot here in Louisiana for me to wear long sleeves all the time. So sometimes it is what it is. Does the East have a different perspective on suffering as opposed to the West? I wouldn't say that there's a huge difference here. I mean, you will see differences in emphasis. You know, you might not see it expressed like in terms of redemptive suffering as vividly as it's expressed in the Roman Rite, but I'm not saying that it's not there. I'm just saying the way things are expressed might be a little different. I haven't seen any differences there substantially. This is curious too when we talk about the East, because I was reading a couple papers on Eastern Catholic theology. One of the papers that I read yesterday is called Orthodoxy Communion with Rome, written, I forget, 98 maybe, somewhere around there. It was actually really helpful. But it talks about this idea of Eastern Catholic theology. What is it? And he succinctly explains in areas where Eastern Orthodox think there's irreconcilable differences with Rome, we show that there's not irreconcilable differences. We show that they're complementary. I think that's a good way to sum up what is Eastern Catholic theology. We're not in the essentials contradicting Rome. We're in agreement with Rome, and what we say is complementary with Rome. That doesn't mean, however, that there couldn't be theological differences that are lower than the essentials. Now, there certainly are at that point. When it comes to non-definitive issues, even non-magisterial issues, you might see differences in theological opinion there between East and West. One of my RCI teachers said not to get tattoos. Do you think it's vanity to have them? Not necessarily vanity. Obviously, it's going to be the intentions, but I don't think it's a good idea. But that's just me. I mean, it's not the end of the world, I think, if somebody does get one. But from someone who has a lot of them, people will write you off automatically because of them. So I'm kind of in the wrong line of business to have them. Now, maybe if you're in a different line of business or whatever, but some people that you don't want to write you off and you want them to hear the message are unnecessarily offended by that. And I think they're wrong for that, but it is what it is. 50K sub tattoo removal stream. So hold on, wait. Does this mean whenever I reach 50K in subs that I would remove a tattoo? I'm fine with just removing them all. I'll probably start with, the ones from here. That way I can wear short sleeves and stuff like that. And then I'll do my chest and arms and stuff like that. But I think it'd just be really expensive. But I admittedly haven't looked into it, but I imagine it would be really expensive to remove them all. Does a microscopic particle of the Eucharist still retain the body of Christ? I think it was Aquinas that said the bread and wine stop being consecrated when they no longer have the appearance, right? I understand what you're asking. So when you say a microscopic particle, if we're still talking about the accidents of bread and wine, then it still is substantially Christ's body, blood, soul, and divinity, regardless of size. Now, if it is no longer the accidents of bread and wine, it's something else. It's broken down. There's been corruption, and it's like digested in the body or something. It's no longer the accidents of bread and wine. Then you no longer have the substance either. So it depends on at the microscopic level. And I don't know how that works scientifically. At the microscopic level, do you still have the accidents of bread and wine? I don't know that one because I don't know a whole lot about the microscopic level. But that's what it would depend on. Is New Orleans a fun place to visit, or are there only like 3 things to see? It's more than 3 things. Come on. Where'd you get 3 things from? I have mixed feelings about New Orleans. I love it and hate it at the same time. There's a lot of bad stuff there. Obviously, I don't like that. But there's a lot of cool historical stuff there, and I do like that. There's a lot of history in that location, especially Catholic history. So I appreciate that. I love that, but I there are some crazy people there, some crazy things you'll see. I pretty much every time I go to New Orleans, somebody ODs, you see somebody die on the street, ODing or something crazy, there's always something every time I go there. So I don't like that. And every time they'll always ask you, hey, where did you get those shoes? Whenever they ask you that, don't answer them and say, oh, I got them here, because then they will harass you and bug you. It's a thing that they do until you give them their shoes. Whereas me, you're not going to take my shoes. But what I'll normally just do is, I already know about this. I'm not playing that. And that's basically what I'll say. And they'll just leave you alone. Just tell them you're a local or something like that. You know that they're doing a scam or whatever. And then they'll leave you alone. That's another thing about New Orleans that I don't like. I wouldn't mind if it's just me, because it's just me. But if I have my family and everything there, don't come up to me and start bothering me and doing all that. So again, that's another thing I don't like about New Orleans. What are some of the books on that wall behind you? So what you can see, like right here, is Aquinas, a series of the works of Aquinas. This one down here, purple, is the Encyclopedia of Religion. Kind of right here and over here are Church Fathers. Great books of the Western world. Which way am I going? Here? Right there. Great books of the Western world. That series. So all kinds of stuff. Do you know any church father that identifies the woman of Revelation 12 with the Blessed Mother? It seems like I've come across this, but I forget offhand which father. Some of them will identify it as the church, but of course the Virgin Mary is the pinnacle of the church, so those aren't mutually exclusive interpretations. Thank you for the super chat. As a canonically Roman Catholic person who goes to a Byzantine Catholic parish who's interested in, how would you respond to people who say you need to stick to your roots and stick to your culture? Yeah. You can kind of encounter this some historically with the Latin Rite, where they would say, unless there's a really good reason, don't go and don't change rites. And it seems like the Union of Brest has an article that speaks about not leaving the Greek rite for the Latin Rite, if I recall correctly. So sometimes you come across that, but then you'll see stuff where it's a little more open than that. I don't think it's an issue that you just have to stick to your roots and your culture. I don't think that that's a legitimate reason to be an impediment. My question would be, why are you changing rites, right? There could be a good reason and there could be bad reasons. Just make sure that it's for the right reasons, not that you're trying to get away from the Latins. You're still in communion with the Latins, so you're going to have to deal with that no matter what. So what are your intentions? What's your motivations? But do you just absolutely have to stick to your roots and your culture? I think that's not a position that I think is sustainable. No. Are the books behind you there just there to make you look smart? What a silly question. Sean Matthew, when Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is made for little children in Matthew 19:14, could this imply all children, baptized or not, will go to heaven? Not necessarily. Because might he be referring to children that have received God's sacramental grace? And could it be that some infants die without receiving sacramental grace, even through some kind of extraordinary means? It's possible. So I don't think that really seals the deal on the issue. What really is what we have to grapple with is two things. Number one, the New Testament teaches God wills the salvation of all. If God wills the salvation of all, then salvation is somehow possible for all. But then we also know that salvation comes through baptism, and we have to wrestle with those two things. What authors do you think should be more well known? Also, do you have a favorite non-Christian philosopher? Non-Christian philosopher is going to be probably Aristotle or Plato. And then authors that I think should be more well known, Thomas Guarino is putting out some good stuff, and he's not well known. Father Thomas Guarino. Will you ever have Dave Armstrong on the show? I'm willing to. I don't know if I have his contact, but I'm willing to. What are some good reasons to leave your birthright and transfer to another rite? Let's say Roman to Byzantine. Perhaps you're married to somebody who's part of that rite, and it makes more sense for y'all to, to be on the same page as far as ritual, although you could participate in their ritual without actually transferring. So it wouldn't be absolutely necessary, but you could say that it would make more sense in that case to be part of the same rite. What if one rite speaks to you more than another, right? Just like some devotions might speak to you more than another, some rites might resonate more with you than another. Now, again, you can go and attend a service of another rite without actually transferring. So, but what if you have, an infant or something? They generally can't commune if you're Latin Rite and you go to an Eastern Catholic, because the Eastern Catholics are going to say you need to respect your own rite. So they're generally not going to commune the infant. But if you change rites, they would. So there could be some reasons there. Is it permissible to believe that the multi-headed and multi-horned beasts in Revelation will actually be a hybrid animals, literally, in the end times? I don't know why that would be excluded, but I don't think that that's a sustainable interpretation. Generally, those are understood to be governments, because that's how Scripture itself interprets this kind of imagery that you see in the book of Daniel, for example. You'll see various images of animals there as well, and they, according to Scripture itself, are not literal but represent governments. And so I think that's the more sustainable interpretation. Have I read Solovyev's Russia in the Universal Church? I'm familiar with it. I even have it sitting over there, and it's in the queue of things that I'm going to be reading, but I haven't read it yet. There's just so many other books that I'm reading still. Reading multiple books and articles all at the same time, and I have many others in the queue. So it'll be within a year that I'll read it, I'm sure. I see a quote about Michael Scott. Always brings a smile to my face. The Office, Michael Scott. Divine illumination and grace are related. Are they similar? Well, they're certainly related, because how could you have divine illumination apart from grace? Divine illumination is not something that you could have naturally. What I mean naturally is not that it's something contrary to nature, but that it's not something that you would attain through your own natural abilities, which if you said it was, then you would be a Pelagian. Um, Why can't someone in the Latin Rite receive communion in a Byzantine parish? They can. Somebody who's already been chrismated, they can. But if you are part of the Latin Rite and your children have not been chrismated yet, your children could not receive because your children have not been chrismated yet. And chrismation means confirmed. Same thing. So if you're a confirmed Catholic, you can receive at any Eastern Catholic Church. And if your children are confirmed, they can also receive. It's just that if your children aren't confirmed, they can't receive unless you became Eastern Catholic and, transferred. What do you think would be the best pastoral response for the Vatican to take towards rad trad sedes? Seems to be a massive failure everywhere I look, even in good seminaries. Well, look, I'm not saying that a response isn't needed, but my thing is, if I were the Vatican, and I know a Vatican is not a person, right? If I were in a position to make some changes here, I would deal first with the liberals. And the reason why is if you're dealing with that, and it's also a pervasive issue, so you need to deal with it anyway. If you deal with that, you will have less radical traditionalists. Radical traditionalists are produced because they're reacting against the liberals. So if you don't have as much of a problem with the liberals, you won't have the production of radical traditionalists because they're not going to be reacting against liberals to that extent anymore because there's not as much liberalism and corruption going on in the church. That being said, that doesn't mean that they're just rad trads are just merely victims. They're not, because many of them go beyond being simply victims of liberalism in the church and reacting against liberalism to creating problems themselves. What should the Vatican do? Deal with both through church discipline. I don't understand why we don't exercise church discipline more. That should simply be done. But it needs to be consistent across the board. And we don't need to discipline only rad trads, but then not liberals. That doesn't make any sense. What is your view on head coverings as a symbol of submission to male headship and reverence or modesty in the liturgy? Well, that comes straight from Scripture, right? So, I mean, that's what Paul says. But it's obviously not canonically necessary, but it's certainly recommended. And so I think it's fitting, but I don't think that if a woman doesn't wear one, that somehow she shouldn't be communed, or she should be excommunicated, or she should be looked down on. Thank you for the super chat, Sean Matthew. Though the Pope can't promote prudential decisions harmful to souls universally, could he do that in his own limited diocese? Yes. If the Pope is just functioning as merely a bishop, yes, because that's not a universal decree. That's just, him functioning as a regular bishop for a diocese. That's not protected by the Holy Spirit. However, I think it would be incredibly unfitting that he would do so. So I just don't know providentially if you would have a whole lot of that. Let's see. Is it theologically problematic for a Catholic to wear an Orthodox cross? What is an Orthodox cross? I don't know what an Orthodox cross is. I know what Byzantine crosses are, like a Byzantine style cross, but is that exclusive to Orthodoxy? I didn't know that Orthodox had a monopoly on various kinds of crosses. I thought that Eastern Catholics also had that tradition. That's weird. If you go to the Archieparchy of Pittsburgh, you'll see what you would probably call an Orthodox cross, but it's not. It would be a cross that is shared by Eastern Catholics and also Eastern Orthodox. Did Grover make you Eastern Catholic? No. I would have joined the Eastern Catholics when I first came into the Catholic Church if I had had access to the Eastern Catholics. I went Latin Rite because that was the only thing I had access to. But back in 2012, when I was joining the Catholic Church, I wanted to become Eastern Orthodox from day one. I'm sorry, Eastern Catholic from day one. I was looking into Eastern Orthodoxy, but when I chose Catholicism, I wanted to become Eastern Catholic. But I didn't have anything available to me. Do you think schism between Orthodoxy and Catholicism is more due to socio-political factors more than actual theological disputes? It's a huge factor. There's no doubt that plays a major role, and that's probably one of the reasons why we still have an enduring schism. But that doesn't mean that there aren't any theological disputes. There still are theological disputes, the Papacy and the Filioque. That doesn't mean that there are no ways to reconcile these disputes or differences. I think that there are, but I'm just saying, even when we get past the socio-political issues, there still are going to be some questions there. Thoughts on the Joe Rogan podcast? I just wish he would stop cussing and using so much profanity and being so vulgar. Otherwise, it would actually be a really interesting show because he has some really interesting guests. But then he's getting high in some of the interviews and just constantly using, severe profanity and things like that. It's just, to me, it ruins it. Which of the ice sparkling drinks is the best? Definitely the lemon, right? I guess so. I don't know. I just get whatever color I can get my hands on and just drink that. Because I don't really drink anything other than water and coffee aside from these, I guess. So water and coffee gets old after a while. You have to get some kind of flavor in there. So I just do these. I wish I could drink Coke or sweet tea. But no, I can't do that. Thank you for the super chat. Hey, Michael, thanks for the stream. Is there a book I can get to read everything that's in Vatican II for myself? I prefer books to digital. Everything that's in Vatican II? Flannery puts out a volume. It's actually 2 volumes, if I recall correctly, for all of the conciliar and even post-conciliar related documents. So look up Flannery's edition, and it has all of the documents of Vatican II along with documents that are related to Vatican II. You losing weight, Michael? Yes, trying to. Michael, the mafia boss, cutting out the middleman. I don't know who the middleman is. What must a Catholic do before starting to read the Summa? Taylor Marshall says everyone should do it. Others say you really shouldn't unless well-formed theologically. Well, look, I'll tell you right now, if you try to read the Summa and you don't have a strong foundation in Aristotelian philosophy, you're not going to get a whole lot out of it. I remember when I tried to read the Summa many, many times and just wasn't getting it. I even tried to do Kreef's, version of it, reduced version of it. Still, a lot of it wasn't getting it. And that's because he's assuming really that you already have a foundation in Aristotelian philosophy. And so what you're going to need to do is work on that first before you could really profit from the Summa. Just sent you the Tapley compilation. Good deal. Have you come across the fascinating story and life of Rabban Bar Salma, the Church of the East monk from Beijing who traveled out to the West? I have not come across this before. Sounds interesting. Sorry, Byzantine cross, you just answered my question. LOL, thanks. There's different kinds of crosses, right? I mean, there's all kinds of crosses. There's a Jerusalem cross. Have you ever seen that one? But the Orthodox don't have a monopoly on any of these symbols. Even the double-headed eagle, the Byzantine eagle, even the Orthodox don't have a monopoly on that one. Because I have the Byzantine eagle here in the chapel. I see it at a lot of the Byzantine Catholic churches that I go to. There are the Byzantine eagles there. So even that one symbol that you think would be associated only with the fanar in Constantinople, no, you'll even see it in Byzantine Catholic tradition. So let's see. See y'all talking about Grover in the chat. Grover. Michael living that ice thug life, the sparkling ice. I don't know what's thug about the ice, sparkling ice. Especially a pink one. Thanks, Given, for the super chat. How do you prepare an infant to receive communion? I'm a bit afraid of what would happen if the infant is not prepared well. Well, in most cases where we're communing infants, it's generally that they're mostly receiving obviously you receive the full body, blood, soul, and divinity and every particle, but under the species of blood is what they're generally administered with, maybe just a little tiny bit of the bread that, of course, is mixed in the chalice. So it's already loosened up at that point since it's mixed in. So you'll just have a little bit of the bread with more of it being the wine. Obviously, we're talking about accidents here. So there's not really anything you need to do to prepare them at that point. Maybe I heard you wrong a few streams ago. I thought I heard you say you start following the Byzantine fast and fast days when you start attending a Byzantine parish. Is that true? Yeah, I mean you can. I mean if you're actually part of that parish, and you could become part of a Byzantine parish without changing your rites. When you're part of that parish, you would also go with their calendar and their fasts. Yes, that's correct. Why do Byzantine Catholics stand while receiving Holy Communion, and why do Roman Catholics traditionally kneel? This is because in the Roman culture, it was usually a sign of respect to kneel. And in the Byzantine tradition, which of course is also Roman, but it's Roman in the area of Constantinople, the tradition in the East was more that you show reverence by standing. Kneeling was not the way that you would show reverence. It would be through standing. So it's a cultural thing. People who think that you have to kneel in order to receive communion, I think that's appropriate in the Roman rite, but don't be too rigid about that, because in the Eastern churches, one generally doesn't kneel in most of the services. Some, but not most. One would stand. In fact, we stand during the whole liturgy. Let's see. Any books to read when first studying philosophy? Also, what is the easiest work to read that Thomas Aquinas wrote? Maybe his biblical commentaries are going to be the easiest, his sermons as well. But as far as some of this other stuff, like the Summa or any of the Summas, Summa Theologiae or Contra Gentiles. I don't know. You have to have that foundation. Good books. I tried reading books to get that foundation, and it didn't work for me. What worked for me is when I went to Christendom, we had to take courses on philosophy. And the professor that I had was a Thomist, and she explained Aristotle and Aristotelian philosophy in a way that finally clicked and made sense to me. She has since passed away, unfortunately, but I'm sure that they have other people there at Christendom. Maybe you could audit some of their courses, but frankly, aside from that, it wasn't making sense to me. But when I finally took those courses, then it clicked, made sense, and I was able to, finally read something like the Summa and make sense of it and really profit from it. Wesley says, just to clarify, I'll be a channel member again in a few days. It's just that transactions here are so slow. I had to pause. No problem. Hey, I appreciate the support. I really appreciate the support. And in the meantime, like I say, if you can't support me financially, pray for me. Have you ever heard of the SSJK, the Eastern equivalent of the SSPX? Somebody mentioned that before, but I've never looked into that. SSJK. SSJ. Priestly Society of St. Josephat. I was afraid that's what the J standed for. That's weird. I actually had the honor of having St. Josephat's relic here in the chapel a few months back. I'll have to look into them. Obviously, I don't know anything about them. Let's see here. Well, seems like Catholic Orthodox dialogues often focus on addressing Orthodox objections to Catholic teachings. What might be some objections Catholics have to Orthodox views? Some of them might allow for contraception. That's going to be a problem. Divorce and remarriage could be an issue as well, and so we have to have that discussion. You also have many times a lack of primacy in the church. There's various views among the Orthodox, but sometimes there's deficient views of primacy. That's going to be a problem. Sometimes deficient views of perhaps original sin. Yeah, I think that's it. Those areas. I mean, there's others, but maybe a deficient view of the Theotokos and what she was and was not subject to at the moment of conception. Is it true that Taylor Marshall officially denied the papacy? I have not heard of that. So I cannot confirm that. I have seen him a few months ago, saying some things that would lead a person to the conclusion that Pope Francis isn't the Pope, but I've never seen him come out and say Pope Francis is the Pope. I've seen him say, how can Pope Francis be the Pope? That doesn't mean he's saying that Pope Francis isn't the Pope, though. It just means that how could a Pope do this kind of a thing. So I haven't seen that, so I cannot confirm that is true. My position on tattoos, we had that earlier. I mean, if it were up to me, I wouldn't get have got my tattoos. I got them when I was 19, 20, 21, right around there, and 18 also, I think. If I could go back, I wouldn't have them, and I've been thinking about getting them removed, but I don't have the funds for that. So we might have to start a GoFundMe. Go fund Michael's tattoo removal. We kneel during the great liturgy of the pre-sanctified gifts. Right. There is some kneeling in the Byzantine tradition, but it's not common. Michael, great haircut and beard trim. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I need to try to keep up with it more often. Good spiritual writings at an introductory level. Yeah. DeSales actually had a really good book that I enjoyed. What was the name of it? It's been a while since I read it. Thomas Kempis too, also, by the way. If we're talking about, Latin Rite, Thomas Kempis, I enjoyed him tremendously. Let me see. Introduction to the Devout Life by Francis de Sales. I enjoyed that. And of course, in the Eastern tradition, you would want to start, especially with Way of the Pilgrim and the Philokalia. And there's different reading plans for the Philokalia and where to start. So maybe check some of those out. We've done some videos about the Philokalia on the channel with Father Deacon Dragani. So maybe watch those videos. He'll get you started. Let's see. And then the Jesus Prayer, but that's not a book, right? You asked me about books, but I'm still throwing in the Jesus Prayer. Hey, thanks, Gibbon, for becoming a member. Appreciate that. Can you do a quick reaction to Ali Dawah debunks Christianity in 1 minute? What is this? I haven't seen it. Do I need to screen this first? Hold on. Is it only 1 minute? All right. I'm not seeing a 1 minute video. I'm seeing stuff that's longer than that. So I'll tell you what. Email me the video that you have in question, and I'll probably review it. Harrison, thank you for the super chat. Michael, in your spiritual journey, did you go in circles between Orthodoxy, Catholicism, Protestantism, agnosticism? By the way, thanks for the show. Yeah, I have. What was helpful for me, believe it or not, was something that we just talked about. Learning about Aristotelian philosophy and Thomism helped give me proofs for God. So that helped me stay away from agnosticism, because I could not deny that there has to be a personal God because of the proofs of Aquinas. Protestantism, I haven't really ever looked back at Protestantism, and I don't think I ever will, because I think that it's not a legitimate position, given that it doesn't offer me anything objective as far as a teaching authority or a way to trace back a proper interpretation of the sacred scriptures in a way that can be traced back to the apostolic era. And I think that that's incredibly important. So for me, they're not even, they don't have a seat at the table of legitimate options. I respect Protestants. I'm talking about the position itself. Orthodoxy and Catholicism, yeah. And there's different Orthodox, obviously. Oriental Orthodox are in the discussion as well. But I think that's kind of where it's at when it comes to Catholicism. I think it's between the Orthodox and the Catholics. So, you could split the difference and be an Orthodox in communion with Rome, an Eastern Catholic. No, obviously you still have to deal with the issue of the papacy, right? How are we to understand the papacy, and is it something taught in the first millennium? And if it is taught in the first millennium, was it a heresy in the first millennium? Is it the right teaching that actually can be traced back to the apostles? Those are the questions that we have to really consider. Thank you, Repose, for the super chat. Any suggestions for those who believe there to be a God but reject the Bible and claim it to be contradictory? God bless you. Yeah, so if you believe that there is a God, and I'm assuming here we're talking about a personal deity, not some kind of, deist understanding, but if there is a personal deity, and if, by the way, you're a deist, how is it that there is personhood in the world, but then the source of all creation is not personal? That just doesn't make sense to me. It would seem like, how can a part of the creation be greater than the source of creation? So to me, the source of creation has to be a personal being. And if it wasn't, from whence did personhood arise? So I'm assuming we're talking about a personal being. Well, okay, if this personal deity exists, and I think that we have proofs for that, okay, surely he would have communicated to us. It would seem unfitting that a personal deity would create us, but then not reveal himself to us. That doesn't make sense. Why would he create us? So it seems fitting that a personal deity would have created us and then also revealed himself to us. And among the different groups out there that claims to have a revelation from God, I find Christianity to be the most convincing. As far as contradictions in the Bible, I haven't seen anything that's absolutely contradictory. I kind of use the rule of Augustine here. Whenever you come across something that seems to be contradictory, it could be a corruption in the manuscript, it could be your faulty interpretation, there could be other things other than it's an actual bona fide contradiction. Grant Michael, I declare bankruptcy. Thanks for the super chat. Yeah, office reference there. If you have not watched The Office, you need to do so immediately. Best show ever. Let's see. Okay. Sean Matthew, thanks for the super chat. Is a Catholic allowed to vote for someone because he supports the death penalty? Or would that be disobedience to the Magisterium? Mm-hmm. So I could see you making that argument if you have two candidates. One is pro-death penalty and one is contrary, against death penalty, but then they're equal on everything else, like they're against abortion and things like that. I could see you making the argument that you would vote for the one that lines up with the prudential decision of the Holy Father. I could also see somebody saying, I have some concerns with the Holy Father's prudential decision, and I'm not sure that I have accepted it, according to the conditions of Donum Veritatis. And then I could maybe see somebody voting for them. But usually it doesn't boil down to just the issue of the death penalty. Usually the candidates, there's other problems involved with them, like being pro-abortion and stuff like that. Thanks, Catholic Gabe. While we're reading recommendations, where's a good place to start if one wants to engage in Thomism? St. Thomas can be a hard read sometimes. Yeah, that was the question we had earlier. You have to start with learning Aristotelian philosophy. You cannot, if you're going to read him like the Summa, you can't really benefit a whole lot from it without having that foundation. And for me, I did not find any particular books that were helpful to this end. I found actually taking a course on philosophy from Christendom did the trick for me. You could try to read various primers on Thomism. I tried to do that as well. Still no go for me. No go. You need to have that foundation in philosophy. Let's see. What would you say an Orthodox person who believes that Avignon papacy is proof the papacy is an innovation? I don't think that logically follows, and I would say that's also problematic for the Orthodox, because since the Orthodox have accepted the papacy as a divine institution in the Sixth Ecumenical Council, the Formula of Hermistus, and also the Seventh Ecumenical Council, if you reject the papacy, you have to also reject Eastern Orthodoxy. I don't think that the Eastern Orthodox can really recover from a rejection of the papacy any more than they can recover for rejecting the Filioque. It's just too problematic, given that the Orthodox were in communion with Filioquists for a good 1,000 years. What do you do with that? Obviously, I'm being rhetorical when I say 1,000 years, but it was a very long time. Ramsey says, wow, my badge is red now. Right. It's going to be different colors according to how many months you've contributed to the channel. Yeah. Given says, I want a Grover badge. Could you imagine if I handed those out? The rad trads would really go after me at that point. They really wouldn't like me. Let's see what else we have. Looking through the chat. Can a pope be condemned a heretic? Yeah, this is a complex one. When you say heretic, are you talking about a formal heretic or a material heretic? I think that Honorius was condemned as a material heretic by the Pope, but the Council Fathers probably thought that he was a formal heretic. And some will argue that the Pope confirmed him as a formal heretic. I don't buy that argument, though, but I'm aware that it's out there. Others will say the Sixth Council erred in the case of Honorius, and that's probably true. They were right in matters of faith and morals, but factually, whether or not Honorius was a monothelite, it doesn't seem that the facts support the council there. Maybe read Robert Bellarmine here. I think he's helpful on this question. As far as and actually Bellarmine's also helpful on the question too, because he doesn't think that a pope could ever be a heretic. But if we're talking about in his private person, materially, yes. Could he be condemned as such as a material heretic? After the fact by another pope, yes. Seems to be some evidence for that in Canon 21 of the Eighth Ecumenical Council. But that would be a reigning pope in union with that council condemning a former pope as a material heretic. That would not be the same as a council judging a reigning pope or a council and a pope judging a deceased pope as a formal heretic. That's a more complex issue, and I think you start to get into more difficulties there. There's a whole lot that we could say about it because there's some good arguments for different perspectives here, and you can see them outlined, of course, in Robert Bellarmine's work. But I think what we have to guard against is that the Pope would teach heresy in his magisterium. As long as we say no, he would not teach heresy in his magisterium, then you would still ask the question, well, what about him personally? Not teaching in his magisterium, but could he personally be a heretic, and could he be judged as one, after the fact? That's a different question, because that's not touching on his magisterium per se. Has there really been an ecumenical council since Florence? Yes. We've had Trent, Vatican I, and Vatican II. What else? Let's see here. I see Brian Denlinger being mentioned in the chat. Fun stuff, fun stuff. Y'all saw the other day Brian Denlinger reviewing a video by Taylor Marshall or something like that. I didn't watch it, but I thought it was funny that he reviewed him. How can one identify that something in the New Testament is a matter of discipline and is not irreformable, like some of Paul's various admonitions? This is an excellent question, because it can get really easy to have the lines blurred here. Ultimately, you're going to need a magisterium to really settle this issue, because you could say that, well, the issue of abstaining from eating meat with blood by the Council of Jerusalem is something that is irreversible. But according to Florence, it was reversed, and it was not irreversible. And even Paul in his own day thought that there were some exceptions that could be made to that. So it's a little difficult, but I would certainly say with the help of that magisterium, we could ascertain that. But without the magisterium, I'm not sure in all cases that we could come up with a way to do that. Do y'all have emojis? I haven't seen them. No YouTube emojis. Look through the chat. Mike, where'd you get that necklace? Oh, I did a show the other day with it, where I got it from. Let me pull it back up here. You came to the right place. Okay, well, looks like they're out of most colors. But let me share my screen. I guess y'all bought all of them, so they're down to only 2 colors. But here it is. Just type that in. Katavat men's, women's, Eastern Orthodox crucifix, Jesus pendant necklace, Holy Christian Church cross necklace. In other words, they don't know what to name it. They just threw everything in there. But yeah, it looks like they only have 2 colors right now. So maybe check back with them on Amazon whenever they get the rest of the colors in. That description. More Grover comments here. I love it. Michael's definitely a DC fan, I can tell. DC, like the Batman or whatever. Isn't that Batman? Hold on. Let me look it up. What is the Batman universe? DC Comics. What does DC stand for? I forget. Let me Google DC Comics. So DC doesn't actually stand for anything? It's literally just DC Comics. Tony says, yes, of course, Batman is DC. I don't know this. I don't know that. But what does DC stand for? It's literally DC Comics. I don't know. I don't know what it stands for. Detective Comics, somebody said. No, that's not it. He isn't even aware of whether Batman is DC, unfathomably based, right? Any tips for a new dad? Yeah, enjoy every moment of it, because your children are going to grow up very, very quickly. So enjoy every moment of it. And get pictures and videos of it all too. Cherish everything. The first step, the first crawl, first word. Try to get everything on camera. I respect Michael for not knowing anything about comics. Yeah, comics. I don't know. I don't know. So, Michael, you have 2 kids. Of my own, 3. So, and Lord willing, I'll have more. So, let's see. Why is the Novus Ordo not done ad orientem? As a Melkite Greek Catholic, I don't understand why it's done differently. Right. It's weird going from an ad orientem liturgy to versus populum, right? So it's so weird. Yeah. I don't see any good reasons for versus populum. I don't think it's evil. I don't think it's sinful, but I certainly don't think it's ideal. And I don't know any good reason to have versus populum over and against ad orientem. I just don't see any good reasons for it. Why? Sometimes it is done ad orientem in the Novus Ordo, but on the whole, it's generally versus populum. You ask why? Because there was a lot of bad speculation that in antiquity it was done versus populum. It was based on bad scholarship. Turns out that was not true. But the discipline perpetuated. And also there's a lot of rhetoric out there, like if the priest faces liturgical east, that he somehow has his back turned towards the people. Absurd. That's clearly not the case. He is leading us to Christ because Christ is going to return from the east. That's why we've always prayed to the east. This is just basic stuff, right? So I'm like you. I don't understand why it's done. I don't know. Don't get it. Maybe if you can offer me some really good arguments for versus populum, I'm open to hearing it. But I can't think of any. District of Columbia Comics, is that why it's called DCR? No, that's not true. The initials for the DC comic books were taken from the Detective comic series. That's not true. Is this real? That can't be real. Is that really what it means? Let's see. The only DC you need is Dei Christus, right? Did you hear Cameron Bertuzzi almost became Catholic? Gavin Orton put on the brakes, apparently. I saw that. I watched the video. I watched that. It was earlier today. Yeah. I watched that. Andrew Sebastian, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. Or the super sticker. Union says, I think Bertuzzi will convert soon. I pray he does. Sounds like he just, wants to take more time. And, I think that there's some wisdom in that, because I think that there's a lot he hasn't considered yet in Catholicism. I think that the evidence is in our favor. I think that that's the right choice, but I don't know if he's studied it enough to really make that decision with any kind of informed sense. And my concern is, if he converts to Catholicism too quickly, my concern is he sets himself up for failure, because there's problems that are in the church. Are you prepared to deal with them? Do you know how to deal with them? Do you know why they're going on? And then, are you prepared to respond to the Orthodox who are going to say, you need to come to us, you made the wrong decision, because here's what all is going on in Catholicism, and we have the true faith because of this and that. Are you prepared to engage that? If not, you might be setting yourself up for failure. So, I mean, it makes sense that he would want to look further into the issues. So, I mean, I'm not knocking it. You have to make sure that, you're well informed whenever you make this kind of decision. Otherwise, I think, again, you set yourself up for failure whenever you're challenged by the Orthodox, or challenged by some rad trads, or you're scandalized by something going on in the church. Yeah, how does the Roman Church explain delaying communion for infants in light of Christ saying, unless you eat his flesh, drink his blood, you have no life in you? Well, look, I mean, I think that has to be understood in the case of those who are able to receive Holy Communion, because, or at least those who are able to, and again, I maintain infant communion, but here's what you're going to have to say to maintain that interpretation. You're going to have to say that baptism doesn't actually save an infant. Wow. I don't know if you want to adopt that one, right? Does the grace of baptism actually save that infant and give them everything they need for heaven? Yes. So you can't take that position. So that's some of the difficulty that you would have to engage if you're going to put that interpretation on those texts. Again, I don't think that the Roman practice is ideal, but the Roman rite is not depriving infants of salvation. They're giving them salvation in baptism. The question is, are they depriving them of extra graces? Yes, they are depriving them of extra graces. However, is it a matter of going to hell? No, it's not. Therefore, it's not harmful to souls, but it's also not ideal. That's the problem that I have with the Roman rite. It's not harmful to souls. It's not depriving them of something essential, but it's also not ideal, because it is depriving infants of certain graces that are helpful. Also, it's fitting. It's fitting that they would be fully communed. It doesn't make sense that they wouldn't receive. Now, I understand there's counter arguments where they're going to say the sacrament of the Eucharist makes more sense for you to know what you're receiving. So they're going to have responses as well. Thank you for the super chat. Any apologist or source you would recommend to people who reject the Bible that it is contradictory? So as far as an apologist that deals with just simply, are there contradictions in sacred scripture? I've seen some good work here by William Lane Craig. You could check him out. He has some videos on this. In fact, I was watching some just the other day. You also have some resources on Catholic.com on this that I saw come out just a few months ago. So maybe just go to Catholic.com, Catholic Answers, and type in Bible contradiction or something like that, Gospels contradiction, and you'll see articles that will come up. I'm old and therefore old school, go GR says. I know tattoos are socially acceptable. It could be a work of art. What's the story with yours? I like what Matt Frad said. The new tattoo is not having a tattoo. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I got them when I was younger. Like I said earlier, if I could go back and make the decision, I would not have them, but it is what it is. But y'all can start a GoFundMe for me to have my tattoos removed. It'll probably cost a lot of money though. So Lord Ganku says, thanks for the answers, Michael. God bless. Thank you. I appreciate it. And you too. Favorite ice cream? Right now I've been doing the keto ice cream. but when I can actually have real ice cream, hot fudge sundae or chocolate, ice cream. Sean Matthew, what was the strongest argument that moved you away from Cajetan's view on a heretical pope? Yeah, there was a paper that I read. I don't recall his name, but it was a theologian that was dealing with this issue. And he offered some really good counterpoints to Cajetan's perspective that really swayed me. I wish I recalled the name of the paper or the author, but I don't. And I'd have to go look through my database to even find it at this point, because it was about a year ago that I read it. So I'm sorry I can't give you more than that, but I did read some stuff that, in my opinion, sufficiently engaged Cajetan's view and I think adequately refuted it. Have you ever watched Gravity Falls? I have no idea what that is. Does Michael have a favorite video game? Yeah, the Assassin's Creed games. I like those because they're historical, So I like the one where you can go and just hang out on the pyramids, or the one where you can go to the Hagia Sophia. That's pretty cool. So I like those because of the history involved. Not that everything in Assassin's Creed is historically accurate, because it's not. My dad does keto and intermittent fasting. Yeah, same here. At least for the time being. What's keto? Is that a Japanese fried fish dish? Absurd Scandal says. It kind of sounds like one, right? It's a particular kind of diet where you eat nothing but fat, but no carbs. So no carbs, no sugar, nothing but fat. And then that causes your body, because it's no longer running on carbs for energy, it has to run on fat for energy. So it starts burning fat during the day, even when you're not working out, because that's what it's using for your energy. So that's what keto is. Not something you would want to do long term. A high fat diet is not really something you would want to do long term in most cases, right? I mean, there could be some health conditions where a person would want to, but I mean, just talk to a dietitian. Let them recommend something to you. Let's see. Any Star Wars game where he's the Sith is his favorite. That's true. If I'm going to play a Star Wars game, I have to be a Sith. I don't want to be the Jedis. Are you kidding me? No. For the same reason that, again, I watch movies and I go for the bad guy. I'm not going for the good guy in the movie, because it's so boring watching the good guy win when you know he's going to win. It's just, come on. I was watching a movie, though, the other day where the bad guy won, but I forget what it was. I'm trying to think what it was now. The bad guy won, so I was happy with the ending. Have you read through the Evergentinos? I've got the 4 volumes of it, and they have really good reflections on the Desert Fathers. No, but I have read a fair amount of the Desert Fathers. Mm, yeah, the issue of the acceptability of removing a fallopian tube for an ectopic pregnancy, is that substantially different from an abortion? Um, didn't Catholic Answers put out something on this the other day? I thought they did. It's outside of my wheelhouse, but I know I saw them. I think it was Trent Horn who put something out. Let me check. Yeah, yeah. Here, go to Catholic.com and just type in ectopic pregnancy and go through some of these. Ectopic pregnancy and double effect. There was something by Trent Horn too the other day. Let's start with these. Here's some caller who called in on December 20th, 2021. This may have been the one I'm thinking of. Looks like Trent Horn answered it. So maybe right here at the 33-minute mark. They're asking here, where do they go? Limbo. But he might still answer that question there. So check it out anyway. But there's plenty of, looks like they got plenty of stuff there already. So certainly check them out. I remember there being some nuance to that issue concerning whether or not it's an abortion. But I'm not proficient in that area to speak about it in any kind of depth. Maybe I should be. Steve Dawson says, I'm on the fat and happy diet, right? That's the best one, right? Are you a big Pelicans fan in the NBA? I don't watch any sports. Now, I like basketball. I like playing basketball, but I don't watch any sports. I never have. Even when I used to play basketball, in high school, I never watched the NBA. I just, my thing is I can't watch somebody else play a game. I'd rather go and play it myself. So I can't watch football. I can't watch NBA. It's just, I'm not knocking people who do. It's fine. I just can't get into it. My football is going to be debates. I can watch a debate. That to me is interesting, but watching football or basketball and stuff like that, I just can't do because I'd rather play it. But again, that's me. To each their own. My dad loves football. Every time I go over there, he's watching football. That's the only time I ever see it. Michael, you talked about this before in a live stream where you would want the bad guy to win. I know. I've mentioned that before. The dinosaurs should have won in the original Jurassic Park. Of course. Are you kidding me? Of course they should have won. They should have won and taken over the world and killed everybody. That's exactly what should have happened. I'm not saying this should have happened in real life. Don't confuse this. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying in this imaginary world, yeah, that's what should happen. Pepsi or Coke? That's a tough one because actually, in some ways, Pepsi tastes better than Coke, oddly enough. Orange juice or apple juice? I'd say orange juice. Thanks for the super chat. Can one affirm papacy but reject Matthew 16 interpretation? No, because you have a consistent interpretation of Matthew 16 by the popes and the magisterium. So I don't see how you could do that. Let's see. I wonder if some of these YouTubers discerning Catholicism end up loving the academic search for truth more than the truth itself. I don't know. You sound more and more like a nerd the more we ask you about sports stuff. I kind of am I'm an oddball. You can't box me in any category. That's the thing. I'm confusing to everybody, especially people who know me. I'm always throw everyone off. So you just can't box me into any particular category. You think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl this year? I don't even know when the Super Bowl is. Usually I find out that it's the Super Bowl on the day of the Super Bowl because somebody will mention something about the Super Bowl. I don't even know when football season is, let alone when the Super Bowl is. I live very much outside of that world, a completely different world. Let's see. Yeah, how would you handle family and friends taking God's name in vain around you? Yeah, I mean it depends on the situation, because some people, if you would correct them on it or just say, hey, please, don't use that kind of language. You know whether or not that would work on the particular person that you have in mind. So if it would work and not be a further division between you and that person, then yeah, go for it. Maybe charitably just say, hey, I'd appreciate it if you don't use that kind of language. But if you know that actually might create more problems between you and that person and be more of a stumbling block for you to be a witness to that person, then I just wouldn't address it. I would just use prudence there. Is this going to be something that will push them further away from Christ or draw them closer to Christ? And you're going to have to discern that. It's going to be different in each situation. Do you think Catholics can watch combat sports, MMA, boxing, stuff like that? Look, I understand the argument against stuff like MMA and boxing because, you could have some permanent damage to the human body that's created in God's image. I understand those arguments. I would ultimately say I would leave that up to an individual's conscience, whether or not they should watch those things. I would leave it up to a person's conscience. I wouldn't put any kind of strict rule out there for anybody. Let's see. What do you think of movies, TV shows that have characters who are anti-heroes like The Sopranos? I'm familiar with The Sopranos, but I've never watched it, so I can't comment on it. Favorite dinosaur, not a T-Rex? Really? Come on, that is my favorite. I guess a Stegosaurus, right? I need to review the names of dinosaurs again. Can a Catholic at least deny that Peter is the rock in Matthew 16? How would you do so? And why would you do so? Peter's confession is the rock. Jesus is the rock. Peter's also the rock because his confession is not divorced from a person. Confessions don't exist by themselves. Persons confess things. So if it's his confession, yeah, by an actual person. That's why I read an Orthodox the other day who made that point, saying, look, this is a really bad argument against Catholics when Orthodox make that argument. And I agree. How would you deny that Peter is the rock in Matthew 16 with the consistent interpretation of multiple fathers, but more importantly, the Magisterium here? I don't know how that would be sustainable. Apologetics should be a sport. I agree, a full contact sport, full contact theologian. Yeah. Tell us briefly about your conversion. I can tell you very briefly, but if you want to hear it in more detail, go to my journey home, EWTN, the journey home. Michael Lofton should come up in detail. But long story short, I was living a really sinful life in Israel, or not Israel, New York, and this was after Israel. I was living in New York, and kind of at the end of my rope, and some guys gave me a Bible. I really appreciated that they gave me this really expensive Bible for free, and I decided to read it. Felt I had nothing else to do in life and I had nothing to live for. Might as well just read this and give it a shot. Read it cover to cover in less than a month, and it significantly changed my life. I just haven't been the same since, and my journey is, progressed from that point on to the present. But you'll want to go and watch that video on EWTN. It's on YouTube for more details. Hey, all, my husband is joining the church. He's joined RCIA this fall. Prayers, please. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad to hear that. That's from Laura B. Dannon. Certainly pray for him. That's good news. Did you also see the Mysterious World episode where Aiken warns us of the dangers of hydraulic acid? I have not seen that one. Is that a recent one? Because I'm behind on his episodes. Sadly, I'm behind. So I need to check that out. I'm a Stegosaurus, Alexander says. Ethan says Triceratops. Those are ones I can name. What's the other one? Dilophosaurus or something? I don't know how to pronounce it. Dilophosaurus, or let me Google this. Hold on. Dilophosaurus. Dilophosaurus. I don't know if I want to be a Dilophosaurus, but Michael, in a previous show, you mentioned the name of some post-Vatican II theology manuals that are similar to those written before the council. Can you give the name of one of these so I can buy it? Yeah. Are you talking about Duranzo, Emmanuel Duranzo, Channels of Revelation? It's online for free in PDF. Just go to Google, type in Emmanuel Duranzo, Channels of Revelation, and it's the second one. There's a PDF of it for free. I don't know if you can get a copy of it for cheap on Amazon. Probably not. Nuanced Theology is a Wu-Tang sword style. That's true. And you remember that short. Good. EWTN Journey Home has helped me when I was struggling. Love that stuff. Laura says, yeah, really good, really helpful. Let's see. Where do you see the church in 10 years? We're going to be dealing with a more difficult situation that we currently are in. Probably we'll have a different pope, and I think it will be a more difficult pope to deal with. So strap in. Know why you're Catholic. Know why you're here. Know why this is going on. Know how to properly respond to it, because I think we're in for some more stuff. Alex says, I can't listen to the mystery of chess boxing the same way ever again. That's funny. Could the Pope call mini ecumenical council to solve minor issues definitively? Yeah, it would be the Synod of Bishops, which he could give the Synod of Bishops the ability to have magisterial authority. They normally don't, but he could, according to canon law, and also he's the Pope, so he could give them magisterial authority, and that could be a mini ecumenical council, the Synod of Bishops. But why would you do that? I mean, why not just have an actual ecumenical council? And by the way, if he gives the Synod of Bishops magisterial authority, it would not be extraordinary magisterium. It would be ordinary magisterium. he could not assign to them infallibility. That would have to be the entire College of Bishops, and the Synod of Bishops is not the entire College of Bishops. So the Synod of Bishops, even if given magisterial authority by the Pope, could not exercise infallibility. The Pope could then take what they say and then promulgate it ex cathedra, but that would be him issuing something by his infallibility. He couldn't assign infallibility to them. But he could assign just ordinary magisterial authority to them. But again, if you're going to have an ecumenical council, don't do a mini council. Just go ahead and have the real thing. Thanks for the super chat, Sean. What do I say to the snarky atheist who asks, if you for sure knew God told you to kill your son, would you do it? Yeah. I would say that would be contrary to God's will, because God would not be asking us this thing. Now, he's going to say that in light of Genesis 22 with Abraham. But I would say that was certainly true at that time. But there are certain things in the New Testament that would indicate that God would no longer tell us to do such a thing, such as that. God is no longer speaking to us in such a way that he would require us to do such things. He might speak to us for private revelation, but not in any kind of way that would involve those kinds of actions. So that's what I would say. How is Francis worse pope than early 19th or 20th century traditionalists who forbade Jews from owning property and set back biblical studies by decades? I would question some of that, maybe historically, but there certainly has been there have been some popes who have had good dealings with Jews and good disciplines in reference to them, and then others that have had some kind of questionable dispositions. And but as far as Pope Francis, I would just simply say that I think that in today's society, with as much visibility as Pope Francis has, there's a greater responsibility that he has to not say things off the cuff. Because as soon as you start saying things off the cuff in the position that he's in, people are going to think doctrine has changed. It's going to create a lot of confusion. So there's just more responsibility there. Thanks for the super chat. What is the Catholic Church's stance on ayahuasca? I have not heard of this. This is new for me. You got me on that one. Stump the apologist. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. South American psychoactive brewed drink. Yeah, I don't know about that one. I certainly would question certain things like that, because what does Paul tell us in the New Testament? He tells us, be sober-minded. Be sober-minded. Seems that drunkenness, illicit drugs, mind-altering substances like what you're describing here, seems like that goes against being sober at all times. So I would certainly say that's questionable. And of course, the church backs up Scripture. So, aren't we saved by Jesus Christ, not the Pope nor the bishops? Yes, that is correct. It is Jesus who saves, not the Pope or the bishops. Absolutely. We're in agreement there. All right. I think I got all of the super chats out, and I think we'll go ahead and call it there. We're at an hour and 45 minutes, so appreciate it. I enjoyed it. This was a fun R&T chill stream. If y'all want me to do more of these, just make sure to put it in the chat. We'd like to see more chill streams. If I don't see the comments, we'd like to see more chill streams, then we just won't do them. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share this on your social media. Lastly, check me out, patreon.com/Reason and Theology, if you want to support me and get access to extra content. See you later. God bless.
Oh, wait, before you go, I would really appreciate it if you would consider supporting this channel.
This is my primary means to provide for my family, and it also helps me to produce content like this video. If you would like to support me, become a patron by visiting patreon.com/Reason and Theology. You'll also get access to extra exclusive content when you become a patron. Lastly, hit that like button and the subscribe button, and be sure to leave a comment down below. God bless.